Hey, 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 family, it's me, your girl, Empress Goddess, the Georgia Peach, coming back at you one more again. Let's get in there. You know, it's all things spiritual over here. Rosicrucian and alchemical practices for developing clairvoyant faculties. Then we're going to get into some more esoteric sciences here. Let's see what I want to go with. No, I'm going to start out with this one first. Then where is it? Okay.
Information. It is very familiar to Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces, telling a timeless and cyclical story from the start of a journey and moving through a variety of experiences, coming to a higher revelation and ending in the same place that it all began, but with a much greater understanding of life, reality, and the sense of self. Since the tarot was invented, the formula of the major arcana has been called the Path of the Fool. For hundreds of years, the Fool generally had no number, except for one-off decks like the 15th century Sola Busca, where it was given the number 0, or decks from the 18th century Belgium that gave it the number 22. Today, however, it's often just given the number 0. Now for us today, being explorers of these cards as well, a profound vision called us to make several changes to this character. The name of the Fool has evolved, and so across Patch Tarot and this video series, the Fool has become the Child. Now historically, the Fool and the Child are related and linked to the Hebrew letter Aleph, whose value is 1. As such, the Child has also been gifted the number 1 in addition to 0, and when we put them together, it makes the symbol for Phi. Together, the 0 and the 1 teach us that the innocent heart of the child is the beginning and the end of any journey and expresses the state of all possibilities described by the nature of this character. It is the return to innocence, for as Heraclitus writes, the kingdom belongs to the child, mirroring the teachings of Jesus, who said, anyone who doesn't receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never get into it. Now I understand that these changes ultimately put Patch Tarot into a new category of tarot. This is a new system altogether, and that these changes may come as a shock to many traditional tarot practitioners watching. But I'd like to encourage you to remain open-minded with these changes. There are more things that line up than break by this shift, but in order to experience the alignments, we must be open to all the ways that it can appear. And you know what? If you don't like it, that's okay. Just pretend that the numbers and the names are the original meanings that you're familiar with. They are essentially all the same in principle regardless. That said, if you're on the other side and you find this fascinating and feel the call to go deeper, please use the link at the top of the description to really explore the nature of these cards. We have a special workshop available and the opportunity to get all of our tarot material in a special exclusive bundle. And now, let us shift our perspective and dive into a world unlike anywhere we've ever gone before. Let us sink into a world replete with symbology and experience the way in which tarot speaks to our souls. In truth, the tarot is a description and a diagram of yourself. It speaks to your soul and attempts to guide you back to who and what you really are, one with everything and in a state of wholeness. The major arcana begins with the child, who appears to be setting out on, or returning from, a journey. This character has nothing but a small pack with him, and walks towards a cliff and into the unknown. He is called the child because it would appear that he is not paying attention to what's happening around him. He's so excited about what he might find on his way that he doesn't even notice that he's about to walk off of a cliff. And with these steps, the child embarks on a story of a lifetime. But will the child learn to pay attention before it's too late? Getting into the more esoteric meanings, the child is connected to the element of air, signifying the breath of life and the power of the mind, the mental element. In Hermetic teachings, It is said that everything in this reality emerges from nothing out of the mind of God, and in this way, we too can create our realities through the power of our thoughts and intentions. This card also relates with Aleph, the creative force of potentials without any action or motion to them. Upon setting out on his journey, the child first encounters the wizard, also traditionally known as the magician. The wizard shares all of his spiritual tools with the child. The child is so excited to receive these gifts, which become invaluable to his quest. A disc, a cup, a sword, and a wand, along with a parchment and a pen. These represent the four elements: the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual aspects of himself. The wizard represents the first aspect of creation, the awareness of the various aspects of the self, and the creative motion put forward into living out a dream. He is connected to the planet Mercury, linked with wisdom and communication, and is also connected to the pathway called Bet, the force from the mind of God which sets the wheels of creation into motion. With gratitude, the child now experiences a sense of expansion into the nature of what this particular journey really represents. Continuing on his adventure, the child meets the priestess, a powerful young woman who reveals to the child that just having these four elements present does not make the story great. She explains to the child that there is a natural ebb and flow to life, and that by living in our hearts and trusting our intuition, we can go with the flow and live the life of our dreams. She reveals to the child that this knowing comes from inside of us, and in this way, we tap into the limitless potential that brings abundance and goodness into our lives and the lives of those around us. Astrologically, she relates with the moon, the subtle reflection of the self and a sense of deep inner knowing. On the tree of life, she is connected to the pathway of Gimel, the gateway to the inner all-knowing self and the inner mysteries behind all forms of spirituality. Feeling enlightened, the child expresses gratitude and continues on his way. Now, in traditional tarot, the child would next encounter the Empress. However, in patch tarot, he actually meets the Emperor next, who has changed positions with the Empress. This is because of the letter He in Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. He is the letter which represents both aspects of the feminine in the Tetragrammaton, Yod-He, Vav-He, the sacred and holy name of God. By shifting the position of the Empress to sit here, it allows her to align with and embody this divine feminine more fully. It also shows that the Hierophant, who embodies the birth of a new consciousness, is born through the feminine. There are several other reasons for this change as well, creating a natural flow through masculine and feminine, yin and yang, back and forth like a wave in these initial cards leading up to the lovers, where they all unite together as one. For those interested, you can read more information about it at patchtarot.com. And again, if you're a tarot traditionalist, just pretend that these next two sections are in reversed order. When the child first meets the Emperor, he learns that this character is all about structure, law, and order. His head is turned toward the sun, but he is still able to keep an eye on the world before him, finding a balance between looking to the light and shining it bright on the kingdom he leads. He explains to the child the value of internal and external structures. By following the laws of nature, we find a deeper sense of who we really are inside and how to get along with all of creation that we are a part of. Astrologically, he relates with Aries, the fiery and energetic leader, and on the Tree of Life, he relates with Dalet, the passage between heaven and earth. Soon after, the Emperor introduces the child to his wife, the Empress, a mature and sacred holy woman who holds the entire earth in her lap. She sits with a gentle bearing in a serene environment, nurturing and supporting all of life. The child inquires into her nature, and she explains that her nature is nurture, to care for those around her, including herself. Astrologically, she is linked with Venus, the divine feminine, and on the Tree of Life she connects with He, the effortlessness of creation, divinity, and gentleness. The child then recognizes this nurturing aspect of himself and becomes aware that he is not the only one on a life journey. He realizes that everyone is, in their own way, and he can be a supportive and uplifting person in the lives of everyone that he meets if he so chooses. The Empress urges him forward on his journey to go and see what the divine feminine has brought into the world. With this newfound information, the child resumes his journey and finds himself meeting what appears to be a great spiritual master who appears in several forms. He is the Hierophant and is the archetype of pure spirituality and spiritual leadership, genuine wisdom passed down by sages and ancestors and practiced through many different cultures in a beautiful variety of ways. These practices are observed by the younger generation, where they are developed, changed, and evolved through the heart of childlike wonder. It is in this way that our collective family evolves and changes. Astrologically, this card relates with Taurus, the down-to-earth, practical aspects of spiritual action, and on the Tree of Life, the Hierophant relates to Vav, that which binds us to our faith and the teaching and learning of cosmic principles. Moving on, the child finds himself in a courtyard and is astonished to see everyone that he's previously met. The magician, the priestess, the emperor, empress, and the Hierophant have gathered together for a sacred wedding. The child recognizes the pattern. All these opposing archetypes find perfect harmony and union with each other entirely through the power of love. He is delighted to recognize that this balance of opposites exists within his own self as well. Astrologically, the lovers relate with Gemini, the twins who embody the union of duality. The Tree of Life pathway here is Zion, the fine line between oneness and individuality. With this newfound inspiration, the child feels prepared to go anywhere and do anything. The child presses onward and sees a great chariot with a suit of armor upon it, moving at a phenomenal speed. The charioteer reaches out and grabs the child, pulling him onto the chariot as they speed along with full control over where they are going. The child soon learns that the chariot represents his own inward and outward motion, as well as the idea of planning for where to go. The child is amazed at this revelation, seeing how far and how fast he has come already, and that his own journey is propelled by such motion. Astrologically, the chariot connects with the zodiac sign of Cancer, the crab with the hard shell and soft interior, and that inner softness is the source of motivation. On the Tree of Life, the pathway related is Chet, the container by which the spiritual will is received and channeled. The child soon leaps from the chariot and is filled with gratitude for the lessons. Propelled by his inner motion, the child soon comes to a grove where a young woman is playing with a great lion. She strokes his mane and, noticing the child, beckons him over. "How are you so close to the lion without being eaten?" the child asks. She smiles, wrapping her arms around the great beast. "We share the same passion for life. Our hearts are in sync," she responds. The child then realizes that within him, these two represent his own higher and lower selves, each with their own unique desires and wills. When they are united in the heart, even the great ferocious lion may find itself calm and peaceful in the presence of beauty. This card, Passion, is astrologically related with Leo, the sign of vibrant personality and conscious will. On the Tree of Life, the related pathway is Tet, a path of many meanings, but ultimately leading to the discovery of one's true spiritual nature. Walking into the woods, the child realizes that he is growing tired. He comes across a clearing and sees a hermit sitting on a stump, deep in meditation. "Well, that looks great," he thinks to himself, and so he walks over to the hermit and takes a seat. Deep into meditation he goes, and in this trance-like state he hears the voice of the hermit in his mind.
"This is the vastness of thine inner world, and all that thou can explore to know thyself."
The child is amazed to find the totality of what is within him could be explored forever. He also notes how peaceful it is here, away from the hustle and bustle of the towns, which before was all that he knew. Astrologically, the hermit relates with Virgo, intelligence and personal development, practicality as well. The Tree of Life association is Yod, the hand of God which moves through us, guiding us in life by the power of listening and acting upon this divine will. Finished with his meditation, the child continues his journey and eventually hears some gentle music. It is sweet and sublime and resonates deeply in the child's heart. He walks towards it and this time finds a musician. The child asks the musician who he is. "I am Elijah," he responds. The child compliments Elijah on his music, but the player insists that the music is not his own, but only flows through him from the great beyond. He explains that there is an ebb and flow to life, up and down, yin and yang, and if we can listen to and watch the natural currents, We can ride these waves of life and experience profound lessons no matter where we are or what we are doing. The child is blown away by this, realizing the greater wheel of flow all around him. The wheel of flow is related to the planet Jupiter, the planet of luck and fortune. On the tree of life, the pathway is kaf, the palm of the hand, the giving and receiving of creator and creation. Leaving the forest, the child encounters a strange sight. A powerful woman within a large crystal who holds a great scale. She is strangely luminous, and he thinks she must be an angel. Approaching her, he discovers the nature of her being. She is the archetype of balance. She reveals to the child that no matter what he does, no matter where he goes, there must always be a striving for equilibrium and balance within him. And if he does not actively strive for balance, balance will find him. The child remembers the music of Elijah, recalling the yin and yang, ebb and flow which turn heaven and earth, and recognizes that he will not inflict karma upon himself if he is willing to strive for inner balance above all things. The astrological relationship here is with Libra, the sign of balance, equilibrium, cause and effect, yin and yang, and so on. And the tree of life pathway is Lamed, which is a path that puts pressure on the soul to stay on the narrow path of righteousness and virtue. If we deviate from our inner calling, we will pay a karmic price till we return to our inner balance. His next meeting again surprises him. He sees a man hanging upside down, his hands pegged to an upside down cross. The sight frightens the child at first. Who is this hanged man? The hanged man, receiving the child, explains why he hangs upside down. He is surrendering in order to embody a higher consciousness, and that the pegs in his hands are Vav, the tree of life pathway symbolizing devotion to his calling. The child, receiving the wisdom in this, desires to understand, and so he too decides to hang himself upside down as a representation of self-sacrifice in order to receive a higher consciousness. We must empty ourselves in order to be filled. This card relates to the element of water, describing the infinite expansion inwards as a result of the suspension of outward motion. The tree of life pathway is Mem, which also means water, the infinite depths inside that we have to explore and discover. Hanging upside down, the child closes his eyes and is greeted by another figure, this time in his inner vision. It is death. The child fears that his journey is over, that he has died, signaling the end for him. But death shows the child a pathway and takes him on an inner journey through a great green gateway into an all-encompassing light. The child is filled with this light, knowing and understanding a deeper purpose as his entire sense of identity and ego dissolves. This card is associated to the sign Scorpio, the constellation of death, sex, and rebirth. The tree of life pathway here is Nun, the fish who moves effortlessly from state to state, releasing attachment to personality in order to discover deeper truths. The child then sees the earth through a portal and, in his astral form, eagerly returns to his body. Returning to his physical existence, the child undergoes a metamorphosis. He experiences resurrection. Having now dismantled all aspects of his ego, he finds himself to be a clear soul with many new aspects of himself to work with. He recreates, molds, and shapes a new sense of self and rises into the air with radiant light, embodying all of the light from his vision with death, but now brought into his physical form. Astrologically, this card relates with Sagittarius, the path of the philosopher, imagination, and focused will. On the tree of life, the pathway is Samek, the support which helps us honor and maintain the transformations we have experienced thus far. Filled with passion and a newfound spiritual connection to life, he moves on, but he immediately encounters a frightening figure, the devil. The devil holds out a handful of gold to the child, who sees that behind the devil are two souls who have already bound themselves to him, chained up, but whose chains, he notices, are so loose that they could leave at any moment if they really wanted to. In this, the child realizes the nature of the devil, not a force of evil, but a symbol of desire, temptation even. The child recognizes that he has chained himself to his desires in the past, but he will no longer let his earthly desires control him. Instead, his soul's desire will take the lead on this journey. This card is related astrologically with Capricorn, the mountain goat who climbs to higher and higher heights, always striving upwards. The Tree of Life letter is Ayin, which describes that this card is more about our focus. Will we surrender ourselves to our desires, or set our focus and dreams upon the top of the mountain, and like the mountain goat, maintain that desire as we strive higher and higher? With gratitude, the child thanks the devil for the timeless lesson and forges ahead. As the child continues, he approaches a great and mighty tower with a brilliant yet dark and angry-looking eye blazing on the top. He enters the tower and realizes as he walks through that this tower represents and embodies his old state of being. He used to be materially focused, limited in his consciousness, not seeing the greater picture or nature of the inner light. The moment he realizes this greater truth, though, that his old way must collapse, he explodes into a brilliant white light, and the tower comes crashing down to earth, revealing a luminous, shining star in the sky above him. This card is related to Mars, the planet of divine masculinity, and the raw power which causes the old awareness to fall away. The Tree of Life pathway here is Pei, the power of communication shared by people around the world, which, by speaking the truth, casts wickedness away and brings about an enlightened mind. The child now stands at the foot of the rubble and looks upwards to the star in the sky. Looking closer at the star, he sees with his third eye a mysterious angelic form hovering above the earth. This beautiful angel appears to be drawing energy from the star and delivering it to the earth below. A sense of warmth, compassion, and deep trust fills the child's heart, and he suddenly knows the vastness of the cosmos and sees how small he is compared to the infinite space. But still, he is filled with faith, because he knows now that there are powerful and magical forces guiding all of reality, including his own journey. This card is related with the sign of Aquarius, the water bearer, which describes the individuality and uniqueness of the self, but has a very humanitarian focus and connected to all in its perspective. On the Tree of Life, we have here the letter Zari, which describes the angling of the personality in order to raise it to a higher frequency. As the child continues peering into the sky, he recognizes that the moon is looking down upon him, and he experiences himself as if he were a little boy again. Looking up at the moon, he finds himself compelled to face his fears and look deep into his subconscious, a realm in which he had never quite ventured into, at least to this depth. Deep into his hidden self he goes, treading towards the light of the moon within, very aware that, in this deep, dark abyss, if he were to go off course, he might become lost in and consumed by his subconscious. Astrologically, this card relates with Pisces, the emotional, poetic, and subconscious depths. It is the final sign in the zodiacal wheel and at the crux of renewal for a new beginning. On the Tree of Life, this letter is related to Kuf. Kuf describes the back of the head, speaking to the reptile brain or the cerebellum, and teaches us to change our lower, animalistic self into a higher self-awareness through the process of integration. Reaching the moon at the end of his path, he looks into the moon closely and sees himself reflected there. He recognizes that he was the one causing the moon to reflect light, and that he actually embodies the sun within him. Exploding with golden light, the child experiences the majesty of the sun within his own heart, illuminating his vessel and shining bright. In this experience lies true enlightenment and the radiant generosity that comes with experiencing such a profound and joyous love. Astrologically, the sun relates, of course, with the sun, which describes the willpower and inner vitality and the luminous radiance of the shining heart. On the Tree of Life, the sun is connected to the pathway called Reish, which speaks to face, personality, and the vibrant power of the Creator shining bright through all manifested things. With this radiance within him, he now rises into the air. A new aeon is upon him as he rises above the earth, and sees a great transcendent portal above him. He opens his arms and rises up, sharing in the spirit of the phoenix, about to be reborn anew. He realizes that the entire world is coming along with him, for his own journey has profoundly affected the world around him, just as the world has affected him. What could possibly lie on the other side of this portal? It is a mystery, and the Aeon is the gateway of transformation, which also relates with the passage of time. The astral signature for this card is the element of fire, which speaks to our spiritual will, as well as a symbol of technology and the aspirations of mankind, marking a shift of ages. On the Tree of Life, this letter is Shin, which also relates with fire and describes the sharp connection between the human mind and the inert substance of matter. All dreams and visions are possible, and if we can forego our need to have everything right now and surrender to the natural cycles of time, there is nothing that we cannot do. The final card in the major arcana cycle, or the path of the child, is traditionally called the world or the universe. In Patch Tarot, it is the crown. In this card, the child emerges from the portal on the other side of the Aeon and rises into a mystical cosmic space. Around him, his Merkaba is active and radiantly spinning, and the child looks forward, seeing a great celestial dragon with someone riding it, beckoning him to come on another cosmic journey. But the child also has one more profound experience. Physically, he finds himself standing on a cliff, the same cliff where he started his journey so long ago. In this new state of being, though, his perspective is entirely different. He looks at the world with new eyes, connected and whole, realizing that the purpose of his journey was not to disconnect from his physical body and become a spiritual creature, but to find a fusion and harmony between the mind, body, and soul as one. This card relates with Saturn, as well as the element of Earth, and secretly, Ophiuchus, the 13th zodiac. This is a place where the cosmic laws of the great universe beyond and the workings of the world at last make sense. And a deeper understanding is known inside, allowing for an actual living of the spiritual nature to be experienced. On the Tree of Life, this pathway is Tav, the path where all cosmic energies and experiences of life form together to bring you to the present moment that you are currently living and breathing within. This breath, right now, even as you watch this video, is the accumulation of all of the life experiences that you've had up until this moment. Once the crown is attained, we find ourselves right back at the very beginning, with the child standing upon a cliff, having completed his journey. With this new enlightened perspective, the child once again sets out on a journey and takes his first step. The tarot is a fascinating and
So, initiation practices. The core of it has to be the awakened self. So the first thing we have to do is like what Gurdjieff talked about. We have to begin to self-observe. We have to observe ourselves through the course of the day. We have to observe, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? That act in itself will actually begin to use the light of our consciousness to illuminate the thinking process, to illuminate our feeling process and our willing process. What this allows us to do is we can then begin to see how much of what we go through every day internally is completely unconscious. It's just one reactive state after another. You get a particular external trigger and you have a particular reaction to it. And so this is the foundation. If you did this, you would end up reaching the goal if you did nothing else. If you don't do this, nothing else you do will matter. You have to do the self-observation. And once you can illuminate, let's say, your thinking process, then you can now recognize that moment at which you start to go unconscious. For the Rosicrucian teacher, people like Steiner, the first thing they look at is, are these things stable in a person? If a person does not have stable thinking, feeling, and willing, no higher development is possible. These things are the absolute foundation. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not a lot of more advanced work to do. But without this, there's no foundation to the building. The building will collapse. Then, of course, we have to start working on soul qualities. So the next thing is to work on positivity. You know, we all know that positivity is important, but you'll actually find that it changes the vibrational quality of the subtle bodies. in a way that changes your resonance with other beings. And openness. Openness is also sometimes referred to by the Rosicrucians as equanimity. This is being open to new information, new ways of seeing things. The Rosicrucians are really strong about not getting stuck in one way of seeing things. So everything that Rosicrucians teach is not dogmatic. Because if it's dogmatic, it's one perspective, and this is the only true perspective, and it's not seen that way here. The openness is to be able to see things from multiple perspectives, and the more perspectives you have, the closer you get to its reality. It was also called equanimity because it has to do with not having an emotional reaction to other ideas or things that come up. And so there's a certain stability that comes with this. We're open to things, but we also have a very stable internal soul life. We don't fall into reactivity. Because for anyone here that's done emotional process work, which is probably the majority of people here, you know that the reactive mind and reactivity is a thing that constantly brings us down. And the last part is simply to harmonize all this together, the harmony of all aspects. Because when you're not used to doing this, you got to focus on one thing at a time. Okay, today I'm focusing on observing my thinking. Today I'm observing my feeling, etc. But once it's become second nature, all of this needs to flow into a complete totality that you don't even think about. This is the foundation in the background for doing the deeper work. Another practice was called the backward review. The backward review is very important to do at the end of every day. In Steiner's own initiation school, he made it a basic practice for everybody. What the backward review is that at the end of your day, as you're about to go to bed, the meditation to do is to intensively from that moment when you're about to go to bed, go backward through your day in reverse order. Now I'm at the moment just before I went to bed. Now I'm at the point where I went to the bathroom. Now I'm at the point where I watched TV. Now I'm at the point that I had dinner. Now I'm at the point that I'm driving home from work, etc. You go back through the day, all the way back to the point when you were last asleep. It might have been a nap. It might have been early that morning. And there's very deep spiritual processes behind this that we're not going to get into all the details of now, but it relates to some very important energetic processes in a human being. What you're actually doing is you're becoming conscious of the activities of that day. That by going backward, thinking backwards, we're actually developing a new strength, like we're flexing a muscle within our etheric life body. The etheric life body is our body of memory, and the etheric body holds all of our life forces. When we begin to exercise the capacity to think backwards instead of forwards the way we normally do, we're actually exercising something in the life body of memory that will become a force that can be used for higher initiation and alchemical purposes later on. But another thing that it can do is it can allow us to observe things that happen during the course of the day that we did not expect. So a corollary to this is that when we wake up from the nap or we wake up in the morning, we spend a moment before we get up in what we think is going to happen. Okay, I think I'm going to work, I'm going to meet so-and-so, blah, 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 blah. And I got a sense of general plan of the day. Now then, when you, at the end of the day, look backwards, you sometimes find that very different things happen than you had planned, or that things that were completely unexpected somehow inserted themselves. And what develops over time with this observation process is you begin to become aware of the spiritual beings and forces that came in at that time to bring something unexpected, something you didn't plan. And this is a very important adjunct to what's being taught in some metaphysical circles today about, create your day and you control everything in your life. It's really has got to be in a balanced format where there's a certain amount of what you create and a certain matter of openness for what spirit can bring to us. So we don't try to rigidly control, no, I'm going to control every minute of my day. The spiritual forces are going to bring things in that we don't expect. And if we look back on our life history, if we did this back review for our entire lives, and we would find some of the most important things that happened with us, where we went to certain places, or we learned certain things, or we met a certain person that ended up changing our whole life, or we got married to, or whatever it was. These are things we never expected. We couldn't have planned. Something else brought us to that resonant point of intersection. We're not getting into it tonight, but a part of this also then links to the classical concept of receiving the conversation of the holy guardian angel. Guardian angel is the spiritual being that's the closest to us, and through this practice, we begin to become more conscious of its activity with us every day. I could go on, but you get the idea of the backward review. Next, we have the observation of life forces, of growth and decay. Today, we have this fantastic tool where we can use film equipment to literally see these Walt Disney films of a seed sprouting and then becoming a plant and blossoming and fruiting and withering away. And we can see in a moment what the Rosicrucians classically did through a process of observation that would take an entire year. They would like watch every part of the growth process. For any of you that have children, you've done the exact same thing with your child. You saw every stage of the growth process of that child and how these forces then naturally unfolded in a particular way. Now, the observation of the life forces does something very significant, very important, and that is that it develops a particular type of clairvoyant faculty inside of us to see how things move through life processes from one stage to another. Because if we can begin to see that, first we observe it in the natural world, then we develop this as an internal capacity to do everything from understanding human spiritual evolution over time to, if we encounter a particular person, to see where they are on a process of crystallizing their I am self-awareness. Now this then leads to the concept of when we encounter any person in Rosicrucianism, to see their archetype, to see their ideal self, their spiritual core, and where that spiritual core is going. We're all different. We're all like snowflakes. We're all made of frozen water in a sense, but we all have a different geometry. Significance of that is that we're developing different skill sets. As we move further down our lives, we'll end up developing certain sets of skills, understandings, knowledge. And so this is linked to the whole concept that over time, the things that cause us the most pain in life sometimes become the source of our greatest strengths. And so what we then begin to perceive in people is that there's been a trajectory of who they've been before and who they are now and who they're going to become. And this is what in Catholicism is called teleological destination, that we're moving toward a particular destination with ourselves, that there's a certain aspect of that's universal for all human beings, the attainment of enlightenment, but it's going to be that we're going to crystallize in slightly different forms to do different things. And so this is a real divine mystery. Every human being holds this divine mystery, and to see what's held within it. It also leads us to actually perceive the hidden spirit and spiritual beings working through all the forces of nature. So give you some idea of the observation of life forces and growth and decay. Now, as we're studying things, we have a particular practice that we do. It's called the dissolving practice. The dissolving practice is an alchemical way to read spiritual text, so that if you're reading a text from any spiritual tradition, what you're actually reading as words on the page was the attempt of someone to crystallize into written language a direct spiritual experience that they had. The only way to get to the core of what they're trying to tell you without getting caught up in a fundamentalist literalist trap is to actually regain the experience they had they're trying to communicate through the words. That means the words have to be dissolved into a direct inner spiritual experience. And so it's a type of meditative reading. And this is very important. And it's part of a whole alchemical process that we go through in consciousness. So once we can dissolve the spiritual text into the original experience, it opens up a great world for us and is absolutely vital for going to deeper parts of spiritual teachings that have been preserved. So with this particular process, what we have is that in the ancient schools, they taught a particular type of breathing. And the way they breathed at that time was to actually make themselves more conscious by being conscious of the breath in and out. So there's a particular yoga of the inhale of the breath and of the exhale of the breath. And what Steiner is basically saying with the Michaelic yoga is that for the Rosicrucian, we have the same inhale and exhale, but now it's done in pure consciousness. It's not done with the breath per se. So when we inhale, in a sense, the observation of the physical world, then that's what we would call a perception. I perceive something in the physical world. Whatever I see, I'm observing nature or a human being, whatever it is, I'm breathing in that perception. And that's a completely receptive activity. If I don't have a receptive soul, I can't do it. But we breathe that in and we hold the perception inside of us. It might be the movement of a child. It might be the growth of a flower. It might be whatever it is. And then we breathe out the concept. The concept is where now I can see inside what I have perceived, the spirit inside of it. So when we say that, I have a concept about this or that, we tend to deal with the idea of a concept as something very intellectual and abstract. Oh, that's all just a bunch of concepts. But a true concept is a thought form from the mind of God. A true concept is a direct perception of spirit within matter. And that's why it's called a concept. The term conception means birth. And a concept is a birth inside of the human mind of the direct perception of spirit working in the world. And so instead of breathing in and breathing out, we're breathing in the perception of the world receptively, and then we're actively breathing out the concept where now I have perceived the spirit in the world. This is extremely significant. So what I want to connect this with then is when we talked about this particular process where we made this movement of manifestation, there's a process here where all of creation goes through cycles of crystallization and dissolving. That's what alchemy is all about. Solva et coagula. It dissolves and it crystallizes. And so with this crystallization process, in time, it will dissolve again. Everything that has moved from spirit here into the physical world has the spirit within it, but in a sense, it's trapped in matter. And many different traditions talk about this. And it's important for human beings because every being in the world has a function. If you study all the biological beings of the world, the worms, the animals, whatever it might be, they all perform a function in the world. They all have a quality in the world. And the human being is, in a sense, the crown of creation. We're the ones that have the fullest, most awakened microcosm of the macrocosm. But that's not a privilege, that's a responsibility. Because everything is consciousness, and everything comes from the consciousness of the mind of God. What this means is that when we can develop the mind of God inside of us, because it's now moved through the process of crystallizing into matter, to breathe in the percept of the physicality and breathe out the concept of now seeing and recognizing the spirit within the matter, this actually performs the function that the Godhead performed of moving it from here to here. The activity of the human race moves it from here back to here. It's our activity of consciousness in perceiving the spirit in matter that links the mental concept that we have back to the mind of God and brings the ascent wave back up. Now, this is something I just want to say one other quick thing about, because we talk a lot today about ascension, and ascension is absolutely fundamental in spiritual development. But within Rosicrucianism, they have a very clear difference between what they call Luciferic ascension and Christic ascension. And without spending much time on it, the upshot of it is that Luciferic ascension is basically the idea that I don't like to be here, and I'm going to get out of here as quickly as possible, and I'm going to basically deny the things of the world. I'm not going to continue to work with all the processes of the world or try to work in the normal processes of society, etc. And I'm just going to work on myself, and I'm going to try to separate and get out of here as quickly as possible. That's different from the Christic form of ascension, which is actually to go as deeply as possible into the experiences of the physical world, because by doing so, we develop strengths that we can't develop if we pull out too quickly. It's like if I tried to get a caterpillar that's in the cocoon and cut it out, I'm just going to have a mess. I'm not going to have a butterfly. There's a whole thing about going into the cocoon of the physical world and the experiences we have here that shape us. They are the alchemical experiences that we're meant to have here, the stuff we don't like going through. They actually shape us in a particular way. And so this Christic ascension is like the model scene with the life of Christ, that the Christ went through this entire process all the way to crucifixion, and then the descent into hell, and then the resurrection, etc., as this model, this passion play of going all the way down to complete union with the earth, and then coming back. And at that point, basically said, I will be with you always until the end of days. And that is mirrored in other traditions like the Buddhists, where the Buddhists once again say things in the Bodhisattva vow, like, I will continue to incarnate until all sentient beings attain enlightenment. It's the exact same spiritual impulse. And so for us, it's the thing of grasping the nature of the physical world and working with it deeply and helping every being in the physical world and pulling it up on the pathway of ascension instead of saying, well, I'm out of here, good luck, and here I go. So this is the big overview of the general idea of a system of initiation within Rosicrucianism. And within this time, I've tried to give you a sense of the bigger context, as well as some of the actual practical exercises. This is one of the great secrets of sacred geometry, and that is this idea about, in modern physics, they had a complete revolution in physics based on the concept of wave and particle. And so before they thought, well, everything's a particle. We just keep going deeper and deeper into smaller and smaller matter, and there'll be a final indivisible little solid thing. That's what they thought in the 1800s, a little solid billiard ball of matter, and that's everything else forms from that. It's the materialistic dream. All got blown out in 1900 with the discovery of black body radiation and the quantum revolution in physics. We find out that there's both a wave and a particle. And particles, physical matter, get formed by the collapse of the wave. Our energy body is the wave, and it actually collapses or crystallizes all the forms in the physical body. Today, we analyze that in terms of things like stem cells and things like that. But the stem cells are just another part of the particle system. And what's really behind it is the wave, the outline of the human body that gets filled up with matter. The central axis in the body exists as an energy circuit in the body before the physical body ever forms. And the physical body forms around that central axis of energy. So it's not a physical structure in the body, it's an energetic structure. Now, what happened when we began to develop modern metaphysics, again with the advent of the Theosophical Society, which became the template for the modern New Age movement and modern metaphysics, is that they began to get bits and pieces of knowledge from different traditions. And we have to be aware that there's hidden secret knowledge in the Himalayas. There's hidden secret knowledge for the Chinese Taoists. There's a lot of hidden secret knowledge for the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians say their mysteries were never betrayed. That means the real stuff that we knew and taught never got sent out to the public. Y'all never learned what we were really doing. And so they get little pieces of knowledge. So one of those things was they found about the Sushumna channel in yoga. But Sushumna, writ large, is really an interior channel along the spine that helps to move the energy up. That's very similar to what's called the governing vessel in Chinese medicine. It's quite similar, but there are some slight different structures because in reality, there is on the inside of the spine toward the center of the body, but not in the axial center, but along the interior of the spine, there's a channel of energy. There's another channel of energy that runs inside the spine. There's another one that runs, although not as well known, on the outside of the spine going up. And those channels don't only run up straight, they actually cross over, creating a caduceus pattern going up like you see in some of the Indian and Nepalese illustrations. All of this is connected to the energetic structures of the body that the physical matter forms around. And so what happened is that many traditions considered the absolute center channel of the body, which referred to today in Taoist yoga as the thrusting channel or the Tai Chi pole, and had some other names in ancient Chinese. And then some of the knowledge coming from India. And some of the Indian traditions, we have to be aware the Indian tradition, just like the Taoist tradition, was not one unified tradition where everybody did the same thing. It's the whole concept of Hinduism is a name for the conglomerate of a whole bunch of different sects and groups that teach things a different way, develop their energy body in different ways, but with similar core concepts of chakras and nadis, etc. Same thing for the Taoists. They have the same core concepts of the energy body, but they develop the energy body differently based on those concepts. So it's considered to be very secret that there's an energy channel running from the crown to the perineum, and that's the core energy channel of the body that interacts with, but is separate from the energy channels running on the four sides of the spine and crisscrossing on it. These are all different energy channels. So one of our fascinating opportunities today and challenges is to be able to properly put together the pieces of information from different traditions into a unified whole of the understanding of the subtle body and different practices. So if you go to any classical ancient spiritual tradition, they understood there are different levels of structure, different levels of manifestation, from the high divine level where you're connected with the one being of all things and all beings together as a unity. And then you go down to these multiple levels, given different names and different traditions, all the way down to the physical plane. And we need to understand that the electromagnetic is actually below the physical plane. It's not life energy, it's not above the physical, it's actually below it. But the whole idea here is that there's a pattern behind everything. And so one of the things I describe in the Gaia series is that the ancient traditions are almost all uniform in saying where all physical structure comes from is a thought form in the mind of God from that original unity field. It starts as a type of a thought form of a pure pattern. Then that pattern manifested the spiritual tradition as archetypal spiritual beings, conscious spiritual beings as real as you and I, more real in some ways, much more advanced, that are an actual crystallization into conscious beingness of certain patterns and certain powers and certain functions. And then they understood that from there, you begin to form the patterns of karma, of actual physical incarnation, of what in the West and the Theosophical Society called the causal plane. Then you come down to the forming of the structures of how we understand things conceptually at the mental plane. Then it comes down to how it forms the structures of our emotional body, which is what really drives most of our behavior. And then it comes down to that wave talked about in physics of the etheric body, the chi, ki, prana level of vital life force. And that's a pure energy structure that then gives the structure that the physical matter then condenses or crystallizes around to create the physical body. And then when those life energy forces are used up constructing the physical body, they decay below the speed of light and they become the electromagnetic spectrum. So if we understand that as the basic understanding in the ancient world for how everything works, then we can understand that it's the patterns behind everything that are absolutely key. So we have to understand as we grow up from a child to an adult and start taking care of ourselves instead of somebody else taking care of us, that process of maturation in every lifetime is a type of microcosmic playing out in a single lifetime of what happens to us as a spiritual being across multiple lifetimes. We start not knowing anything, being very ignorant, and higher spiritual beings have to guide us and teach us. And then we incarnate in the physical body. We go through a whole series of those things. So our physical lifetime tends to be a microcosmic representation of the same pattern of the multiple lifetime journey. And this happens all over the place. Today we call it fractals, that this particular pattern exists on all scales of development. I show, for example, in the Gaia series, that something like the torus pattern. If you get a sphere, which is the primary form for holding consciousness and energy together, you get a sphere, which is a holding form, and you open it up at the top and bottom so energy can flow through it, like an hourglass shape in the center, and then flow around the outside and then back to the center and back around the outside. That's a torus. Once you start to perceive these patterns, you see how everything is connected, and it's the same basic patterns that rule everything. The torus exists from the subatomic level. We have photographs of toroidal structures subatomically up to galactic levels that have toroidal structures. So this is the idea of scale invariance, that regardless of how big or small the scale is, the same pattern is the key pattern to create the energy flow. But the same thing is true for us emotionally and mentally. All of us, I think, have had the experience where we grow up and we have these tremendous yearnings, emotional yearnings. Where's our missing half? Where's the person we're going to unify with? Where's all of my romantic aspirations I was taught to have as a young child, taking in media about that perfect partner I would have that would make my life complete? And we had that emotional yearning. And then through the school of hard knocks, with some relationships that maybe didn't work out well, and we were very naive in, and we got knocked around, we began to say, oh, I better figure this out. And then we begin to see patterns. I have certain patterns of behavior I didn't know that screw up my relationships. I see dysfunctional patterns in other people, and maybe I can handle that in this person, but I don't want to deal with it in this person that's just too dysfunctional. So we start seeing those patterns at the emotional level. Same thing at the mental level. How do I put my life together? How do I divide my time in the day? What's important and not important to me? Everything has a pattern on every level. And once you begin to understand these patterns, the same thing is true on the spiritual levels. There are patterns to how spiritual beings work and operate. And this is going to be important for us because when we pass through the gate of death, if we don't have some understanding for how spirit operates and we haven't developed any organs of spiritual perception, we're as deaf, dumb, and blind spiritually as Helen Keller was in the physical world, where she had to be guided around everywhere. And that's why you see these pictures in the old Egyptian tradition, like from the Papyrus of Ani, which we know as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and is better called the Book of Coming Forth into Light. That in that you see Ani, who's the initiate being trained, he's like bent over, hunched over, and he's got this greater being holding his hand and guiding him through these worlds that he's not able to navigate through or understand himself yet. That's what happens to every human being. Our goal is to develop to where we understand the patterns. You have a healthy body once you understand the patterns that make a healthy body. Until then, you're a victim of unhealthy patterns and not knowing what the patterns are. Same thing with your energy body. They have strong vital force. You have to understand what those principles are for feeding that, both through the food we take in, through breathing practices, exercise, a whole variety of things. The emotional body being healthy, and you actually have a life that's emotionally full and fun and joyous rather than a constant misery. Mental life, knowing how to control your own mind so your mind doesn't destroy your life, but your mind becomes a superpower. All these things are based on the knowledge of pattern. The key of everything is that, and all classical traditions agree on this, that everything came from a unity, the one. Now, in modern materialistic physics, they describe that state of unity, the one, where there is no polarity, there is no duality, everything is unified. They refer to this as the singularity. That singularity, according to physics, that unified state, which they don't understand anything about, they admit, is the source of all creation, because that unity, the one, split into polarity, the two. And then our whole world is based on polarity, positive and negative charges, with the electron and the proton, positive and negative charges in electricity and magnetism. The opposites attract and the same repel. That's a universal principle that you'll see anytime you get a bar magnet, try to put the two similar poles together. They repel each other. You can feel something feels like a gelatinous force field pushing them apart. And you get the two opposite poles, and you can't keep them apart. They want to be together. So what polarity does is it allows things to be separate, but energetically moving with each other, energetically affecting each other. That allows evolution. That allows dynamic development by being in a polarized world. The only evolution as a spiritual being is only possible in a polarized world, in the school of hard knocks here on the physical plane. And that's why we're sent here to a polarized world. Otherwise, we often, when we're suffering in the physical world, say, I just want to be back, in that blissful unity state that I came from, that we all subconsciously know exists and we subconsciously yearn for, and then sometimes dysfunctionally try to attain through things like opiates or things that put us in that state but destroy our physical lives. But we have a subconscious yearning for it, and that yearning can sometimes be addictive. We have to understand the reason for being here on the physical plane, or for actually having the internal fortitude to grapple with the polarized world, where we may suffer and we may not get what we want, but it's part of developing to a higher level than we were before. So everything is polarized, everything is split here. And so when the ancient knowledge of energy science from the old traditions got lost, it was reclaimed to begin with by French researchers in the early 1900s. But what actually happened was that, and this is not a conspiracy theory, this is based on books written by the participants in the early 1900s in French. What actually happened was that the Jesuit order within the Catholic Church went around the world collecting esoteric information and bringing it back to the Vatican Library. That's simply a historical fact. And one thing they did with that knowledge is they were very interested in Egypt, and they really tried to cultivate Egyptian knowledge. Somehow, putting this stuff together, they were able to develop in their own circles an understanding of what we call radiesthesia. Radiesthesia is the ability to directly detect subtle radiations that are too subtle to be detected by electromagnetic equipment, but that the human body and energy field can be trained to detect. These are the real life energy forces. Little metal boxes don't pick it up, but they can pick up electromagnetic waves because they're decayed to a lower level. But the true life energy forces, radiesthesia can detect. And so they developed a system of this that they then trained French-speaking Catholic priests in that science. The most famous of those was Abbé Mermet, a Swiss Catholic priest who wrote a book that was very, very famous. You can still get copies of it today. That was called in French, Je Père, How I Work. And in English, it's called The Principles and Practice of Radiesthesia. He revealed that he was trained by the Jesuits, and that Jesuits were doing things like they would train missionaries going to a foreign country to use radiesthesia to detect the life forces from things so that they could tell, is this water drinkable or is it poisonous? If I have an illness, what plant in the natural landscape is going to heal that illness? So this is based on what we think of today as dowsing. But I want to make something really clear to the listeners. Most of what we have today in North America and Europe that we call dowsing is mental dowsing. That's not the ancient form of it. That's a modern form. And it's not mental dowsing. In mental dowsing, you would ask a question and you would program the pendulum to move a certain way to give you like a yes or no answer. That's not at all what we're talking about here. This ancient method is to use things like pendulums. And they found all kinds of specific pendulums in archaeological digs in Egypt. Thousands and thousands of these things in the Valley of the Kings and elsewhere that are now in museums all over the world that are actually energetic vibrational pendulums used for radiesthesia 5,000 years ago. So what Abbé Mermet did in giving out the knowledge to the public is people who had nothing to do with the Catholic Church, weren't that spiritually oriented to begin with, people who were scientists, people like Louis Turin, who was a radio wave engineer in France in the early 1900s, who taught at the Sorbonne. He taught the French military radio wave technology. He was smart enough to understand that what we have today with our radio wave and electromagnetic technologies is scraping the surface of all the natural waves that exist. And so he began to use that knowledge to create radiesthesia tools that could detect all the different parts of the spectrum of energy that makes up life energy and the healing forces that actually heal biological life, which we didn't have any frame of reference for before. It's not the electromagnetic spectrum. It's not the spectrum of matter that we call the periodic table. This is the spectrum of life energy itself.
One of the most daunting aspects of starting to study alchemy is just where to begin. Not only does alchemy span nearly 2,000 years of philosophical, technical, theoretical, and spiritual development, but it is marked by literary text and artistic representation, which are among the most difficult, obscure, and confounding in history. And to make matters worse, most of these texts are still known by their relatively obscure Latin titles. And even getting a sense of what was written by whom and when remains challenging even to experts in the field. And even if you do pick out a text, they're often marked by incredibly esoteric artwork and symbolism. Even the names of alchemical elements and the processes they undergo are often encoded in what is now called decknamen. Studying alchemy, especially as a beginner, can be extraordinarily disorienting, difficult, and discouraging. And I often get the question, given the difficulty of alchemy, where should I begin studying these texts and images? In this episode, we're going to introduce and explore what I take to be the single best text for introducing anyone to the theory, practice, and history of alchemy. The Summa Perfectionis. Oh yeah, pretentious Latin title? Check. Or the Sum of Perfection by Gerber. I mean, pseudo-Gerber. I mean, Paul of Toronto. Obscure authorship? Check. I mean, I said it was going to be the best text, not the easiest text. I mean, after all, you're the one here learning about alchemy, right? What did you expect? I'm Dr. Justin Sledge, and welcome to Esoterica, where we explore the arcane side of history, philosophy, and religion. Rather than pick a text at the very origins of alchemy in Greco-Egypt, or at the very high point of the esoteric imagery that alchemy produced in, say, the 16th or 17th centuries, or study some of the texts that are the high point of Islamic alchemy, I'd rather start somewhere actually in the middle, somewhere about the middle of the 13th or early 14th centuries. So by starting somewhere in the middle, this allows us the vantage point of peering back into the past to see how previous series led to the text of the Summa Perfectionis, and will also allow us to effectively set the stage for the very dramatic developments in alchemical theory and practice through the High Middle Ages and all the way up to the early modern period. So in my opinion, the Summa Perfectionis is an ideal place to begin because it puts us right in the middle and allows us to look backwards and forwards in time, both in terms of the practical and theoretical developments of the alchemical traditions, both of the Islamic world, but also in the development of alchemy in the European theater. As you may know, Robert of Chester effectively introduced alchemy into Western Europe with his translation work completed on February the 11th, 1144, For what it's worth, I really want to advocate for February the 11th being World Alchemy Day. From the 12th through the mid-13th century, European alchemy was basically dominated by theories and practice inherited from the Islamic world. But by the mid-13th century, those ideas that had been imported from the Islamic world had begun to mature and develop on their own in the European context. Here in the mid-13th century, we're in the time period of someone like Thomas Aquinas, of Fibonacci, and of Moshe de Leon in the circle that produced the Sefer Zohar and thereby the Kabbalah. And it was at this point, in the latter half of the 13th and early 14th centuries, that the basic translation projects that had inaugurated the Renaissance of the century prior were mostly complete. And by this point, Europe was poised to basically begin developing its own theoretical and practical ideas in the alchemical theater. So after inheriting a wealth of philosophical and alchemical ideas beginning in the early 12th century, Europe, about 100 years later, was finally beginning to produce ideas and theoretical moves all its own. And it was around this time, the late 13th and early 14th century, that the Summa Perfectionis first appeared in manuscript, and not a moment too early. Alchemy, only about a century old in the Western European context, was already undergoing its first major theoretical and practical crisis. As you can probably imagine, when Islamic ideas traveling from Arabic were translated into Latin, it wasn't uncommon for entire texts to get scrambled and for even questions about authorship to become very, very muddled. This exact same process had actually gone on when Greek wisdom had been translated first into Arabic in the late classical period. The most famous example of this was when a bunch of text from Plotinus, the founder of what we now call Neoplatonism, was translated from Greek into Arabic. For whatever reason, some of these texts were extracted out and actually attributed, for whatever reason, to Aristotle. This unusual text was eventually named the, quote, Theology of Aristotle, and actually had a huge impact on the development of Neoplatonism in the Islamic world. So we here have a text written by Plotinus traveling under the name of Aristotle, but despite the fact that the names are all scrambled, that didn't matter. The text remained extraordinarily influential. A very similar process of scrambling would also play itself out and have a huge impact in the development of alchemy in the early European context. In the early 13th century, a certain Alfred actually translated a text from the Islamic philosopher Ibn Sina. In that text, Ibn Sina had actually argued two very important and controversial ideas as they are applied to the alchemical theories that developed in the Islamic world. The first theory that he forwarded was that it was impossible to produce anything by artifice as well as it was produced by nature. That is to say, art was always inferior to natural production. And the other was that species of metals were utterly untransmutable. That is to say, one species of metal could not be made into another, any more than a donkey could be made into a dog or a dog into a rock. This is, of course, doubly devastating for alchemical theory, because it's precisely the ideas found in alchemy that what can be done by nature can also be done by art or artifice in a kind of laboratory. And further, many people took it that the entire purpose of alchemy, at least to some degree, was the transmutation or the perfection of various metals. This, of course, leads to the idea that part of what alchemy does is convert base metals, such as lead and tin, into more noble metals, like gold and silver. Now, the fact that Ibn Sina wrote that wouldn't be that big of a deal, except for the fact that Ibn Sina's text in Alfred's translation was appended to the very end of a text by Aristotle. And over time, what happened was that the Ibn Sina text in Latin sort of melted away into the Aristotelian text, and Europeans thought that this was one long continuous text, all of it written by Aristotle and not Ibn Sina. So the problem here becomes obvious. If it were just Ibn Sina saying that transmutation weren't possible, people could probably shrug that off. But when Aristotle, the great founder of all of natural philosophy, says, look, you can't make things better than nature, and the transmutation of metals is impossible, that is a positively devastating blow for the development of alchemy in any form, either in theory or in practice. Of course, alchemists at the time just didn't accept this. There was dissent very early on. One of the major early dissenting voices was the anonymous Book of Hermes. Who better to argue with the illustrious Aristotle than the very founder of alchemy itself, Hermes Trismegistus, the famed Egyptian sage? Hermes Trismegistus, after all, lived hundreds, perhaps thousands of years before Aristotle, and if anyone had the true knowledge about the nature of nature, it would be Hermes, not Aristotle. And this whole business would precipitate a major debate starting in the 13th century about the exact role alchemy could play. Could it, in fact, do better than nature? As you may know, Thomas Aquinas took the side of so-called pseudo-Aristotle, claiming that no, transmutation was not possible, and art was always going to be inferior to nature, with people like Roger Bacon taking the opposite position. For Bacon, it was the case that art could actually do better than nature. The alchemist could produce even better gold than that produced in a mine or in the natural environment. This art versus nature question has never really been solved completely either in the philosophical world or in some sense in the popular imagination. It isn't uncommon for me to go to a grocery store or a supermarket and see something marketed as all natural, indicating that it's somehow better than something made by art. Of course, to quote Hannibal Lecter, the same God makes cholera and swans, so whatever it is about nature can be equally good and equally bad. And ditto, we can create all kinds of things by art that also seem equally good and equally bad. So can art outdo nature? Well, it depends on who you ask. But the Summa Perfectionis thinks at least it's possible for art to imitate and perhaps even improve upon nature to some degree. It is in the midst of this debate in the late 13th century that the Summa Perfectionis appears and carefully argues its position on how transmutation and improvement by art is possible. And further, it either predicts or describes, depending on how you want to read the text, just how one species of metal can be transmuted into another using a great medicine that we now refer to as the Philosopher's Stone. So in the Summa Perfectionis, we have both the theoretical and practical idea that art can improve upon nature, and that nature can actually be perfected using a kind of artifice, that is the Philosopher's Stone. And in some sense, this will set the tenor for what is possible with alchemy.
Of all the topics in the Kabbalah I get asked about, those about the Sitra Achra, or the other side, in the Klipot, or the demonic husks left over in the process of creation, are absolutely among the most common for whatever reason. Suppose it's the same reason that people gawk at car crashes or watch.
Hold on a second, y'all. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to find something else here I wanted y'all to hear. I'm gonna have to go out and then come back in. Hold on a minute, babes. My grandson in there. That shit wasn't that crazy, man.
I have largely expounded unto thee, for these are the contents or abridgment of them. Avoid all conversation with the multitude or common people, for I would not have thee subject to envy, much less to be ridiculous unto the many. For the like always takes to itself that which is like, but the unlike never agrees with the unlike. Such discourses as these have very few auditors, and peradventure very few will have, but they have something peculiar unto themselves. They do rather sharpen, and what evil men to their maliciousness. Therefore it behoveth to avoid the multitude, and take heed of them, as not understanding the virtue and power of the things that are said. How dost thou mean, O Father? Thus, O
Love you.
Son, the whole nature and composition of those living things called men is very prone to maliciousness, and is very familiar, and as it were nourished with it, and therefore delighted with it. Now this white, if it shall come to learn or know that the world was once made, and all things are done according to providence and necessity, destiny or fate bearing rule over all, will he not be much worse than himself, despising the whole because it was made? And if he may lay the cause of evil upon fate or destiny, he will never abstain from any evil work. Wherefore we must look warily to such kind of people, that being in ignorance, they may be less evil for fear of that which is hidden and kept secret. The second book, called Pomander. My thoughts being once seriously busied about the things that are, and my understanding lifted up, all my bodily senses being exceedingly holden back, as it is with them that are very heavy of sleep, by reason either of fullness of meat or of bodily labor, methought I saw one of an exceeding great stature and an infinite greatness call me by my name, and say unto me, What wouldst thou hear and see? Or what wouldst thou understand, to learn and know? Then said I, Who art thou? I am, quoth he, Pomander, the mind of the great Lord, the most mighty and absolute Emperor. I know what thou wouldst have, and I am always present with thee. Then said I would learn the things that art, and understand the nature of them, and know God. How? Said he. I answered, that I would gladly hear. Then he, Have me again in thy mind, and whatsoever thou wouldst learn, I will teach thee. When he had said thus, he was changed in his idea or form, and straightway in the twinkling of an eye, all things were opened unto me, and I saw an infinite sight. All things were become light, both sweet and exceedingly pleasant, and I was wonderfully delighted in the beholding it. But after a little while there was a darkness made in part, coming down obliquely, fearful and hideous, which seemed unto me to be changed into a certain moist nature, unspeakably troubled, which yielded a smoke as from fire, and from whence proceeded a voice unutterable, and very mournful, but inarticulate, insomuch that it seemed to have come from the light. Then from that light a certain holy word joined itself unto nature, and out flew the pure and unmixed fire from the moist nature upward on high. It is exceeding light, and sharp, and operative withal. And the air, which was also light, followed the spirit and mounted up to fire from the earth and the water, insomuch that it seemed to hang and depend upon it. And the earth and the water stayed by themselves, so mingled together, that the earth could not be seen for the water, but they were moved, because of the spiritual word that was carried upon them. Then said Pomander unto me, Dost thou understand this vision, and what it meaneth? I shall know, said I. Then said he, I am that light, the mind, thy God, who am before that moist nature that appeareth out of the darkness, and that bright and lightful word from the mind is the Son of God. How is that? Quoth I. Thus, replied he, understand it, that which is thee seeth and heareth, the word of the Lord, and the mind, the Father, God, differeth not one from the other, and the unison of these is life. I thank thee, but first conceive well the light in thy mind and know it. When he had thus said, for a long time he looked steadfastly one upon the other, insomuch that I trembled at his idea or form. But when he nodded to me, I beheld in my mind the light that is innumerable, and the truly indefinite ornament or world, and that the fire is comprehended or contained in or by a most great power, and constrained to keep its station. These things I understood, seeing the word of Pymander. And when I was mightily amazed, he said again unto me, hast thou seen in thy mind that archetypal form, which was before the interminated and infinite beginning? Thus Pymander to me, but whence, quoth I, or whereof are the elements of nature made? Of the will and counsel of God, which, taking the word and beholding the beautiful world in the archetype thereof, imitated it, and so made this world by the principles and vital seeds or soul-like productions of itself. For the mind being God, male and female, life and light, brought forth by his word another mind, the workman, which being God of the fire and the spirit fashioned and formed 7 other governors, which in their circles contain the sensible world, whose government or disposition is called fate or destiny, straightway leaped out or exalted itself, front the downward born elements of God, the word of God, into the clean and pure workmanship of nature, and was united to the workman, mind, for it was consubstantial. And so the downward born elements of nature were left without reason, that they might be the only matter. But the workman, mind, together with the word, containing the circles and whirling them about, turned round as a wheel his own workmanship, and suffered them to be turned from an indefinite beginning to an undeterminable end, for they always begin where they end. And the circulation or running round of these, as the mind willeth, out of the lower or downward born elements brought forth unreasonable or brutish creatures, for they had no reason, the air, flying things, and the water such as swim. And the earth and the water were separated, either from the other as the mind would, and the earth brought forth from herself such living creatures as she had, 4-footed and creeping beasts, wild and tame. But the Father of all things, the mind being life and light, brought forth man like unto himself, whom he loved as his proper birth, for he was all beauteous, having the image of his Father. For indeed God was exceedingly enamored of his own form or shape, and delivered unto it all his own workmanships. But he, seeing and understanding the creation of the workman in the whole, would need also himself fall to work, and so was separated from the Father, being in the sphere of generation or operation. Having all power, he considered the operations or workmanships of the 7, but they loved him, and every one made him partaker of his own order. And he, learning diligently and understanding their essence, and partaking their nature, resolved to pierce and break through the circumference of the circles, and to understand the power of him that sits upon the fire. And having already all power of mortal things, of the living, and of the unreasonable creatures of the world, stooped down and peeped through the harmony, and breaking through the strength of the circles, so showed and made manifest the downward born nature, the fair and beautiful shape or form of God, which when he saw, having in itself the unsatiable beauty and all the operation of the seven governors, and the form or shape of God, he smiled for love, as if he had seen the shape or likeness in the water, or the shadow upon the earth of the fairest human form. And seeing in the water a shape like unto himself, in himself, he loved it, and would cohabit with it, and immediately upon the resolution ensued the operation, and brought forth the unreasonable image or shape. Nature, presently laying hold of what it so much loved, did wholly wrap herself about it, and they were mingled, for they loved one another. And for this cause man, above all things that live upon the earth, is double, mortal because of his body, and immortal because of the substantial man. For being immortal, and having power of all things, he yet suffers mortal things, and such as are subject to fate or destiny. And therefore being above all harmony, he is made and become a servant to harmony. And being hermaphrodite, or male and female, and watchful, he is governed by and subjected to a father, that is both male and female and watchful. After these things I said, Thou art my mind, and I am in love with reason. Then said Pymander, This is the mystery that to this day is hidden, and kept secret, for nature, being mingled with man, brought forth a wonder most wonderful, for he, having the nature of the harmony of the seven, for him whom I told thee, the fire and the spirit, nature continued not, but forth, brought forth 7 men, all males and females, and sublime, or on high, according to the natures of the 7 governors. And after these things, O Pymander, quoth I am now come into a great desire, and longing to hear, do not digress or run out. But he said, Keep silence, for I have not yet finished the first speech. Behold, I am silent. The generation therefore of these 7 was after his manner, the air being feminine and the water desirous of copulation, took from the fire its rightness, and from the aether spirit. And so nature produced bodies after the species and shape of men. And man was made of life and light into soul and mind, of life the soul, of light the mind. And so all the members of the sense.
Aries. Where you at?
Hello, and happy birthday to all my Aries. This is Queen Amun Ra coming to you with your general reading. Happy full moon in Libra. We're already feeling the effects of it at the time of filming. The moon is like 90-something% illuminated, and so you'll start to see it become even more illuminated. 100% in some areas of the world on the 5th, and then some on the 6th. But you're already feeling the effects of this full moon in Libra, this pink moon. Thank you to everybody who is sending me those pictures. Thank you. I will post my own very soon for where I am. All right, let's get into it. Let's go. All righty. First card in the deck is the Knight of Cups. We have the King of Cups. We also have the Moon card. We have the Two of Cups. We have the World card, and also the Justice card. So someone is offsetting some emotions from your past that have been kind of weighing you down. The Justice card is attached to Libra, the sword. You see this sword right here? So see these 2 scales right here, like emotionally, because we have a moon in Libra. So emotionally, something from your past has been really, really weighing you down. And so source is like, it's time to go ahead and take action and go ahead and close out that cycle airtight. Something from your past, just because it's coming back up. Remember, a moon in Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is a planet of love, relationships in all forms, love in all forms, arts, music, that kind of thing. And so sources, like if it's emotionally draining you and it's keeping you, it seems like it's blocking something, it's time to hop on your horse and head out. So somebody's ex from their past, for somebody, it could be a lot of things that's trying to resurface from the past, but somebody's ex from the past is trying to resurface, and they may be, and if you want to entertain it, it's entirely up to you, but somebody's going to have to toss out bitterness. If you want to reconnect with an ex, sometimes it's okay, and especially when you've been out of a person's life, they had a chance to think about some things. Maybe they had a lot of stuff that was going on in their lives. But if you decide I need to go ahead and close it out in a way that I'm hitting a reset button. So if we're going to start this thing back over, I'm coming back in with a lot more wisdom. I'm coming back in. And so now it's time to have conversations. That's only if you want that, right? That's only if you want it. Another scenario I'm picking up on is that something from your past that keeps rearing its ugly head that was overwhelming for somebody. Could have been from a Cancer, Pisces, or Scorpio. Source wants you to close out the cycle airtight. Just close it out airtight, right? And that could have been from a family member, because there's a lot of emotion here, right? So it's several energies. You could have been, but you're not putting everybody in the same category. You could, let's say, for instance, if you remember, everybody there, our birth charts make us unique. So let's say, for instance, you dated a Scorpio and you got along just fine with that Scorpio, but you had a Scorpio in your family you didn't get along with. They're not the same, right? They're not the same because you and Scorpio are actually ruled by the same planet, Mars. They just have another generational planet. So what sets this love interest Scorpio apart from family member could be, other placements in their birth chart. So source doesn't want you to lump everybody, in the same category. If you want to reconnect with somebody from your past, okay, there should be some new rules if they want access to your universe. Hopefully that makes sense to somebody. But the bottom line is that source wants you to close out cycles airtight. So if you forgave somebody and you want to give it another shot, then certain conversations shouldn't even be coming back up, unless you're just saying, let's get some things established right from the beginning. But some of those cycles you will be closing out for good. Here we have the Lover's card, the World card, the Six of Swords. The World card came out twice. We have the Knight of Wands, Five of Wands, and also the Eight of Wands. So somebody is definitely sailing away from something or just climbing up out of something like climbing up out of overthinking about a situation. So I do see twin flame energy coming across somebody's path, whether it's in business or romantically linked, And so again, if you are closing out a cycle with an ex-love interest and you're saying it's over, we've tried a gazillion chances, I'm done with that, it's time for me to move on to bigger and better things, then I do see that coming your way. But source wants somebody to close out some things from your past, both in your personal and your professional life. Like just go ahead and close out some things airtight. And so somebody's demons are trying to get the best of them. Everybody has demons. So that could be like, again, and you could have been triggered by a lot of different things. Maybe somebody mentioned somebody's name, or maybe you saw somebody, or maybe something in your social media feed popped up and got you to thinking about something. But source is saying just get as far away from anything that's going to drain you emotionally, Aries, anything that's going to drain you emotionally, so that we can bring on a new love a lot faster. So if you're done with the old love, keep it high vibrational, because a new love is on its way and it's coming in very, very fast. So congratulations to somebody. Congratulations to somebody for your person coming in. All right, here we have the Two of Wands. We also have the Four of Swords. We also have the Page of Swords. We also have the Hermit card, Page of Wands, and also the Six of Wands. Victory. So I do see somebody moving on from something from your past and, kind of getting really rooted and grounded, kind of getting settled. You got the messages, all the messages that you needed to receive. These two signs right here, Gemini and Virgo, are ruled by Mercury. So you got all the messages you need to receive to go ahead and close something out airtight. So whatever it is, if you're ready for new love, new friendships, new business relationships, or whatever, source is telling you exactly what to close out. sever it, close it out emotionally and physically. Close it out. Here we have the Two of Wands. And so the Two of Wands lets me know that somebody has a lot of opportunities. Like I see somebody's business growing, more book sales, more, views and visits if you're on YouTube, more traveling, more meeting people, more opportunities to apply for new jobs. A lot of things are coming your way. The source wants somebody to close out something airtight, both in your personal and your professional life, and move forward. And here we have the Page of Swords. So some anxiety that you may have been feeling about something is going away. The further and further you physically get away from it, the less and less you'll be focused on it. And so Swords really wants you to get your rest. We also have the Page of Wands. So there's some new inspiration coming across, letting you know that you're headed in the right direction to just move as far away from it. For some of you all, it's going to be new love. For some of you all, it's going to be, a new acquaintance, maybe a new business partner or something you're working with. But something is coming across your path to let you know you're headed in the right direction and to keep on moving as far away from something in your past as much as possible, and go ahead and close it out. Go ahead and close it out. But yeah, so you don't want to get hung up on, I don't get along with this sign, I don't get along with that sign, because that sign that, because again, it could be somebody who is, a new love for you, and they may handle something totally different than, whatever sign you didn't get along with. Page of Pentacles, we have the King of Swords, the Eight of Wands, we have the Five of Wands, Four of Cups, and the Seven of Wands. So I do see some new information coming through. We're talking about the Page of Wands here. Some new information that for somebody it'll be like money, not necessarily coins and paper money, but it'll feel like money just because the new information that Source is giving you is telling you to move on from something so that you can be in receiving mode of whatever it is that you want. So if it's a job that God is saying move on from and go close it out, or if you're going to stay on the job, right? Because closing out a cycle doesn't always mean, like in some instances, you will be physically moving on from something physically and emotionally. But in some instances, like let's say, for instance, you got an opportunity to apply for a higher level position in the company, right? And so Source is saying, just like you would be boxing up the things at your desk, getting ready to move to a new office, you got to take your emotions with you as well. So get ready for this new energy. And if it's with the same company, you haven't had the best feelings about the people you're leaving behind in a new department or a new space, then somebody's going to have to find something else to nurture your spirit so that that's not the topic of conversation moving into, because I see additional opportunities coming your way. So congratulations in advance. You don't have to sit around and ruminate. This is the Four of Cups. You don't have to sit around and ruminate over. Here we have the Five of Wands. I saw this come out twice, where somebody's demons are really, really trying to irritate them, both personally and professionally. Like I said, something is coming up from the past, and whatever your demons are, you want to get those demons under submission. For some people, demons are food, certain types of food. For some people, it's, alcohol. For some people, it's whatever. There's so many different types of demons: insecurities, instabilities, lack of career success, so many different types. But this is where you don't get off your throne. This is King of Swords energy. The whole purpose of somebody going through something and closing out your past is to gain wisdom, and that's it. To gain wisdom, what works for your universe and what doesn't. Here we have the Seven of Wands. So I do see somebody being able to, sit down and meditate and seeing yourself physically move beyond and getting your solar plexus chakra in alignment. Then we have the Eight of Wands, quick progression of things. So yeah, coming through twice. So somebody's definitely being fast tracked. Somebody could be fast tracked on their job. But again, it's about leaving that last position behind, leaving it behind emotionally and physically, moving on. Again, happy birthday to each and every one of you all. Hopefully you all get some good pictures of the full moon in Libra. Hopefully you all get some really good pictures. Okay, this card, accepted before this new time. And then we have the Eight of Wands, quick progression of things. So yeah, coming through twice. So somebody's definitely being fast tracked. Somebody could be fast tracked on their job. But again, it's about leaving that last position behind, leaving it behind emotionally and physically, moving on. Again, happy birthday to each and every one of you all. Hopefully you all get some good pictures of the full moon in Libra. Hopefully you all get some really good pictures. Okay, this card, acceptance. Radical acceptance in the now opens the flow. So somebody definitely wants to accept that it's time to move on from something. Especially if you're trying to attract anything, it's time to move on from something. But again, congratulations to whoever got some kind of a raise or increase. Don't worry about what other people are saying in the last job. Don't even worry about it. Again, you getting promoted. They can't stop or block it. So congratulations to you all. Don't let it burn you out. I see a lot of fire here. Toss it into a fire pit, and so you can move on. So congratulations to you. Enjoy your birthday. Don't give so much energy to something that was emotionally draining you. Here we have aromatherapy. Somebody's definitely gonna get some kind of sweet scents. We have we have variations of pink and purple in here. And so this pink is really for forgiveness. This stone right here is for forgiveness and love and attracting love, if that's what you want. Love in all forms, if that is what you want. Let's see what else we got going on here, Aries, and let's get ready to close it out. Let us get ready to close it out. It's time to breathe out. Time to breathe out. So Source just wants somebody to take a deep breath and say, okay, time to close out some things so I can move on to bigger and better. Move on to bigger and better. So yeah, definitely Source wants somebody to take their emotions and physical body and their emotions and go ahead and close out something. Because a new job for somebody is not going to necessarily know what you're talking about as far as the old job, even if you work in the same company. Like, what? I didn't know that about so-and-so. So you don't want to bring that kind of energy into a new job. It's best to just go ahead and celebrate, the money coming your way. Here we have affirmations for patience. I am here in this present moment. I have all that I need. I lack nothing. Time is relative. Right now is all that matters. I wait with excitement. All good things come in due time. All is working for my highest good, because it is. Let's pull a number and let's close it out. Let's pull a number and let us close it out. Let's close it out. 19. I am a pioneer. Independence and self-sufficiency are necessities to you. You are extremely capable in life and in work, and aren't afraid to take big risks to achieve what you desire. That is your card, Aries. Again, happy birthday to each and every one of you all. Put that fire up under you and keep rising to the top, because you are being fast-tracked somewhere that for you is going to feel good on the other side of all of this. So leave the past in the past. That's what I have for you, and I'll see you on Freedom Friday. Bye. Hello, hello, hello to all of my Capricorns. This is Queen Amon-Ra coming to you with your general reading. This reading is for the 5th of April through the 5th of May. We are coming up on, if it's Wednesday where you are, it could be still Tuesday in some parts of the world. But if it's Wednesday where you are, we have one more day for this full moon. We have a full moon in Libra on the 6th of this month. It's a pink moon. We talked about the color pink and looking for signs and wonders from the universe. That's also on what color pairs best with pink is green. We're talking about auras and also signs and wonders. And so let's get into your reading. Let's see what your cards have to say. Can we keep this under 15 minutes since you all teased me the last time? And I thought it was funny. Can we keep this under 15 minutes? We'll see. All right, let's go. Let's see what your cards have to say, Capricorns. Let's see what your cards have to say. Hopefully you all are having a fantastic week. This is a, don't forget to set your intentions every single day, and don't entertain anything else from anybody else's stuff that's causing you to weigh down your own scales within your own universe. And I use the word scales because Libra is the symbol of the scales, right? So scales of justice within. So you don't want to, and we're talking about moon energy. We're talking about feelings, subconscious habits, moods, emotions, those kind of things. Don't let anybody else weigh you down, both either your job, your professional life, or your personal life, right? So, and not after you set your intentions, you set your intentions. So here we have the Knight of Swords, we have the Seven of Wands, we have High Priestess. Someone definitely has psychic abilities or healing energies, right? Definitely the higher mind in your spiritual journey. So you're seeing things from a higher frequency. We also have the Knight of Wands. We also have the Six of Pentacles. And so more money is coming across somebody's path. It could look like new opportunities coming across your path. And so somebody is sensing that you are looking for some new opportunities. So they are trying to send new opportunities your way. So if they're obedient, it's coming from God either way. Let me just say this. So new opportunities to some kind of an approval, some kind of a green light for some kind of increase coming across your path, Capricorn, is happening. Sources need you to stay away from overthinking. Like where is it coming from? Just ask God. God, can you show me in a dream? Can you, since we're about to fully illuminate the moon outside and fully illuminate my universe, can you show me exactly where the money is coming from? You don't have to sit there and overthink it. Like hoping that it's going to come to me when you have a mouth to open it up and say, God, show me what are additional streams of income. So you'll be able to defend your decision to stay away from anything that's burning you out. Anybody that's trying to pressure you to answer questions too soon, or anything that could, where there's like mental that they've learned on the dark side of the moon. They are more indecisive, more self-indulgent. It's all about them. They seem like they're becoming more dependent on certain things. They're frivolous, indecisive. And they're weighing heavy on you. Sources like get as far away from that as possible. No matter what form it comes in, you get as far away from it, because opportunities are trying to come your way and you don't need any distractions, right? Opportunities. And so you don't need to look for people's approval, right? You don't need to look for people's approval. So sources already approved somebody. So great. Congratulations in advance for more money coming your way. But that money is also representing God is sending information your way, right? This is where you need not to answer certain phone calls. If people are leaving your life, let them move on with their lives, because now you have more room to receive what you've already asked for. You don't need to sit there and lament over it. You don't need to sit there and overthink why somebody left. Praise God if they're coming in. Praise God if they're leaving out. The end. Okay. If they're not calling you or texting you anymore, or whatever, I'm laser focused. This light is about to be fully turned on, and I need to see everything in my universe. So if I need to release something, I can release it in love. Right? Release it in love. So again, somebody has psychic abilities, and also, clairvoyance, claircognizance, all the claircognizance, clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and so because you're at a higher frequency, you're at a higher mind. So here we have the Eight of Wands. We also have the Star card. We also have the Knight of Swords. We also have the Ten of Cups. We also have the Knight of Wands, and also the Magician card. Magician card lets me know that clear messages are coming through. And so somebody is really optimistic, very hopeful about their future. Someone feels blissful, about their own future. Because again, when you're highly spiritually gifted, for some people, if you don't know what actions to take next, it can feel like a burden, right? It's like, okay, I don't know what to do. Why am I having all these downloads and dreams? Again, jot them down, get it out, take some kind of, this is divine masculine energy, take action, write them down, get it out of your spirit, so you're not sitting there just trying to let it swirl around in your universe. And now the rest of the day is coming my way, and I had a dream about something last night. What am I supposed to do with that? Now you stressed out, right? Forgot to set your intentions, letting everybody else dump stuff into your universe. Take action immediately. So source is saying stay away from the overthinking. Knight of Swords came out twice. Again, both in your personal and professional life. You don't need to overthink things. Even if it comes down to somebody saying, hey, Capricorn, I have something to tell you. Just ask them right straight up. Is it good or bad? I need to know, because I don't want to sit there and overthink. What is it? What is it? What is it? No, it's all good. Okay, now you can take that off your plate. Right? Again, that sensitivity in you is actually a gift. All you need to do is ask questions immediately. Like if somebody, I got something to tell you. Is it good or bad? It's good. It's good news. Okay, great. I'll wait till you call me back. I'll wait till you, text me back, or whatever the case may be. Things are about to start happening really fast for you, but it's dependent upon how quickly you channel your energy towards something that rejuvenates you, because this is about your energy. Rejuvenates you, where you have mental clarity when you're doing certain things, and away from things where you're overthinking, and now you're upset, and now you're burned out, and you don't feel like, okay, I'm stressed. I'm not really sure what it is, what's happening. Sources like get right back to what you have, where you have mental clarity, where you feel like you can levitate, where you feel like, and this is both in your personal and your professional life, right? So where you feel like you can levitate, mental clarity, where you feel personally powerful when you're doing it, where you feel, I think I said mental clarity. Yeah, all of that, right? So Knight of Wands. Again, Knight of Wands came out twice. This is where God is saying to you, take action. Do not just sit there And I say that because you all are receivers, divine feminine energy. Like, okay, how much? I need some more information. I need some more information. Open your mouth and say, God, show me what I'm not seeing. So I don't sit here and ruminate over this, where I'm just now I'm starting to sweat. I'm getting stressed out. I don't know what to do. All of this fire here is when source sends it to you. And even if I don't know what it is, God, show it to me. Let me toss it into a burning bowl. Thank you, God, for just giving me the strength to toss overthinking into a burning bowl, right? Because you're learning how to protect your inner child. This is your inner child, inner girl or inner boy. This is your divine masculine to your divine feminine. So you're also protecting your peace, whether you're in a romantic relationship or not. You're protecting your inner peace. You're in harmony with yourselves, right? And so I do see, like I said before, I do see a lot of blessings coming your way as long as you can stay away from distractions, whoever they are. Doesn't really matter. Somebody's trying to put extra pressure on you, and you haven't fully processed some things. You're saying, God, give me an exodus strategy out of this, and the exodus strategy immediately was to just toss it into a burning bowl. Okay, now that I've burned the overthinking up in my own universe, now I can see things clearer. Right? So now I can see things clear. I'm ready to receive information from you, source. So somebody should be firing up that burning bowl. So that's what I'm seeing for you so far. That's what I'm seeing for you so far.